Well, why don't we get started, everyone? I'll give you just a second to take a seat or go where you'd like to stand for the presentation tonight. I'm Lonnie Inzer, Deputy Chief for Emergency Management for El Paso County. Thank you for having us up here tonight. This is a great honor to come up and talk about flood preparedness, for UPass, but also for all of El Paso County. Thank you very much for coming tonight. Tonight we're going to have different speakers. We have Commissioner Clark, we have flood recovery personnel, we have the Forest Service here if you want to speak to them later tonight, and we have CDOT, Colorado Department of Transportation here. So there's many people here tonight. If you have questions, you can speak to them afterwards, and then we'll have a question and answer time at the end of the presentations tonight. The Office of Emergency Management is multifold. Emergency management is a general discipline. We interface with all the disciplines in county, state, and federal government. As you can see, we've been involved closely with recovery since the floods last year and recovery since the Waldo Canyon and Black Forest fires. We work with Department of Transportation, with our county engineers. We work with all the municipalities, and then we have departments throughout the county. We work with the Sheriff's Office. We work for the commissioners, and the commissioners guide us on what their goals are for recovery and future operations for emergency management in the county. So let me recognize a few people that are here tonight, some other officials that won't be speaking tonight, but they're here in case you have any questions for them later. We have Mayor Lori Worthy from Green Mountain Falls in the back here. Fire Chief Eric Eide from Cascade Fire is not here. He's on a call right now, but recognize that he was trying to get here tonight. We have Fire Chief Steve Murphy from Green Mountain Falls. Is there another Cascade firefighter here tonight? Yes, Steve Murphy is here tonight. We have Manitou Springs Police Chief Joe Ribeiro. Chief. We have Oscar Martinez. He's the District Ranger for the U.S. Forest Service. We have Director Larry Small of the Upper Fountain Creek Watershed Flood Control District. Mr. Small. We have Executive Director of the El Paso County Public Services Department, Jim Reed. Where's Jim? Okay. We have Mark Stanwood of the Fountain Fire Department and Fountain OEM. Mark. We have Jay Rohrer of the Manitou Springs City Council. We have Karen Cullen. She's a candidate for El Paso County Commission, District 3. Are there any other officials that I have missed that would like to be recognized? We do. I want to recognize the Office of Emergency Management staff that are here tonight. We have our planners, Bart Evans and Ted Sayer. We have our hazmat coordinator, John Cole. And then we have our Master of Ceremonies, Robin Adair, who is our Community Emergency Preparedness Outreach Coordinator. Where are you at, Robin? Robin will be speaking in just a second here. Well, first I'd like to introduce the Honorable Commissioner Sally Clark. She is a Commissioner for District 3 for Western El Paso County, and she has a few words now for you. Commissioner.
Thanks, Lonnie. So thank you all for being here. You deserve certainly some thanks for being here on a weekday night. Robin's sneaking in there. We wanted to show a couple of slides just to kind of jog our memories about how it can be and the things, and then we're going to talk about the things that are being done now and have been done over the past few years to mitigate some of the potential flash floods that we saw certainly right after the Waldo Canyon fire and then consequently over the next few years. As you'll recall, some of these videos are pretty graphic in terms of what water can do in a very short amount of time along Highway 24. And I think you're going to hear tonight from folks who are much more versed in this than me, the ones that actually do the work, to be able to make sure that they talk about not only the mitigation that's going on, but the preparedness and also the process in which CDOT is going to be using in terms of when they close and when they don't Highway 24 to make sure that it doesn't have a negative impact on certainly our tourism and our commerce going back and forth along Highway 24 while still keeping folks safe. I think it's important for us to note and for you to all know that over the period of time since Waldo Canyon fire happened in June of 2012, that we have spent, if you look at all the partnerships, and I'm talking about everything from the nonprofits like Coalition for the Upper South Platte, known as CUSP, as well as Rocky Mountain Field Institute and others, in addition to CDOT and utilities and City of Colorado Springs, Manitou Springs, and El Paso County. All of those folks have put in approximately, well, over $50 million in recovery process. So while we look at response, the bigger job is on the other end of the recovery and what we're seeing. And you will see as we talk tonight what the folks are doing within our public services and our public works departments to make sure that we continue to keep our residents as safe as possible. You may have heard that a few houses, Pete may or may not talk directly about this over here. Pete works in our budget office. We just closed on 3 homes that were purchased through the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. Remember, the Waldo Canyon fire was 2012. That is not a quick process, but we do want to thank the folks that worked with us on those 3 houses, and Mr. Harris, certainly the Wetzels and the Fitzgeralds, to get those houses purchased and out of the area that is certainly a threat to those homes. When we're working with the federal government, it continual making sure that they understand that flood follows fire, because when you talk to somebody who's from New Jersey or somebody who's from another state, they see flooding, but they don't necessarily see flooding like we've seen it. It's a different type of flood, and it's still terrible and devastating, but it's just not quite the same thing, and it's very hard to get across, and that's why some of us have made trips to Washington, D.C., while we've invited out our senators and our congressmen. Our governor has been here several times to see what's been going on in our region. So I just want to thank you all for coming tonight to care about this issue. I appreciate the media being in attendance as well to help carry that message. Spring rains are going to come, and we just need to be prepared. And I'll use the words, I think it was someone, and I'm trying to remember in Manitou whether it was Chief Ribeiro or someone else who said, don't be scared, be prepared. And we really need to be prepared as we go into potentially a spring rain and flood season, which Colorado has always been subject to flash flooding. We've just seen it in a higher level than we've ever seen before. So thanks for coming. Thanks for letting me to represent you as your commissioner in District 3. And I'm going to turn it back over to Lonnie, I guess, or to Robin to go ahead and introduce our other speakers tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to run AV and introduce speakers. The next speaker is going to be Pete Boyjich from he's the Fire and Flood Recovery Project Manager. Is that the correct title for that? With the county. And I'm going to let you take it away, and I'll get your slides up.
Thanks. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming out. I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time. I just had a couple of very quick slides. The first one that we'll pull up here basically is a very quick snapshot of work we've done up here along the Highway 24 corridor since Waldo Canyon. Okay. Basically, some of the gulches, everybody probably knows them by various names, but Sand Gulch, which is just down here above the elementary school, we did work in there to try to stabilize that channel. The Cascade Channel is the north side of the highway right at the intersection to turn to go up to the North Pole, Santa's Workshop, Pikes Peak, Rampart Terrace, and then we did some sediment basin cleanouts right above Manitou. The picture is just a representation of what a project kind of entails, and this one is of that Cascade Channel. When we talk about a project, we're talking about multiple impact pieces that we've done, basically drop structures, log sill walls, things that try to slow the velocity of the water down so it drops out the sediment. The faster the water goes, the more sediment can pick up, the more erosion, the more damage that takes place. So the Cascade projects for us entailed pieces starting way up in the watershed, almost up on Rampart Range Road, coming down all those collection drainages, and then down through where the housing is, down all the way to the library, basically, right there at Highway 24. When we look at just these projects here that we've done along Highway 24, we spent about $3.8 million on those. I wanted to put that in perspective because that is just that handful of projects. When you look over the 4 disasters that have hit El Paso County in the last 4 years, Waldo, Black Forest, the 13 floods, and now the 15 floods, just El Paso County is dealing with over 100 projects with a total cost or impact of $78 million. You can add on top of that the work the Forest Service has done, CDOT has done, the nonprofits that we were talking about, and all those municipalities. That is a huge number that we're trying to deal with across the county. The next slide I had is just pending projects, and once again I tried to limit that to things that are up here along the Highway 24 corridor. After the 2015 floods, we have projects ranging all the way out on the Eastern Plains, all the way down the main stem of the Fountain Creek, but up here, as the commissioner had just mentioned, we had an HMGP, the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, to purchase 4 homes. To date, we've been able to purchase 3 of them. Hopeful on the 4th, we're hoping to get that done in May, but those homes are all homes that were located right in or along a channel that they're basically going to get washed away at some point. So we're trying to remove those so we don't have that kind of destruction and debris going down into the creeks. The next one up there is the FMA. It's flood mitigation activities or pre-disaster mitigation. We have one more home that I can't talk about because we don't have it under contract, but we're looking to acquire one more that's in that same situation. It's been repetitively damaged by flooding and is in an imminent risk of being destroyed. Other projects that we're currently in the application process on are the Chipeta Park Road box culvert, which is right next to the elementary school down here. That is one of the primary ingress-egress routes for Green Mountain Falls. So that one's a fairly high priority for us. The other project we've got going right now, Crystal Park and the Ruxton Creek corridor. The city of Manitou is over here somewhere, and they're also putting in a grant application right now, and that is more of a fuel mitigation kind of project to stop the erosion, try to reduce the impacts from a fire so it doesn't flood out and cause the same erosion that we're seeing in some of these other corridors. Those projects, just those 4, total almost $7 million of work that we're trying to apply for. One of the things I would say is that we're now 4 years after Waldo Canyon. Money tied back to that disaster, tied back to the 13 floods, is becoming more and more difficult to come by. You know, time has passed, other communities, other parts of the country are having disasters. That funding is being limited. So we're still trying to put together whatever resources we can to find and take care of projects. The photo I have here, that's one of your neighbors. That's a private driveway that serves 4 homes. And one of the things I wanted to really point out is if you'll look, how much water is actually flowing in there. It had rain for roughly 2 months. Water ran for 2 or 3 months. The culvert you see here was plugged up with sediment. It couldn't drain that road properly. So right off of Highway 24, you guys probably see it every time you go up and down the pass, right after this side of Pyramid Mountain Road. It started down on the highway, which is just down off that corner, cut up, turned the corner, and went up that road for about 400 feet. The water never really got higher than that. So it doesn't take a whole lot of water. A little bit of water, a lot of velocity does a lot of damage. So as the commissioner was talking about, we don't see the big inundation floods like you see in the coastal areas. We see quick bursts in high velocity water that does a whole lot of damage. That's why the work, the Forest Service, CDOT, everybody's trying to put in basins and catchment things. Almost all the damage we saw up here up the pass comes from things like that are just those little bits of water that are going fast and they're sustained, that just cut and cut. You'll see them deposit and then you'll see them grade like that. One of the things I really wanted to make sure I pointed out, if you look at where has the money been spent, why are you doing this, why are you not doing that, there's a gentleman back there by the name of Larry Small. Larry is with the Fountain Creek Watershed Flood Control Greenway District. I've been practicing. But after the Waldo Canyon fire, Larry got together and formed a little coalition called the Fountain Creek and Cheyenne Creek Flood Restoration Master Plan, which were a couple of different municipalities. We obtained some grant money and basically hired an engineering firm to go out and map this entire creek from the headwaters up in Teller County all the way down to the confluence at America the Beautiful Park. The other part of that was the Upper Cheyenne Creek. But if you'll go to that website listed at the bottom, you can actually access that plan in all the map books. It's a huge file, but it breaks down the river by reaches. And it talks in there, it shows, here's the potential backups, here are the pinch points, here are the high priority projects. I'll let Larry talk more to that. I would definitely recommend talking to him about that. But anyway, we're still doing some projects. The thing I would say to be aware of is please, as you're going through, take care of those culverts. If you're seeing a little bit of erosion, deal with it. Don't let it get big. Like I said, that took less than 3 weeks for that to give out. These pictures, I just wanted to show a representation. This picture was taken on May 11th. It's up here in Sand Gulch, right up above the school. It looks like a nice gravel parking lot, nice flat stream bed. 10 days later, it was the Grand Canyon. That's kind of up above the houses. The picture down here is of the private road that serves 5 houses. You can see one of the driveways up on the right. There's no way those people could get in or out. And it was basically doing that, going from being full to cutting to filling back into cutting all summer long. So the last one I'm going to show you here was on Rampart Terrace. The meeting we had roughly this time last year, it was raining. The water was coming down Rampart Terrace, and you can see where it was cutting out the road. The water was getting under the pavement and undercutting it. We were about to lose that road. Our road and bridge folks came out with some bridge decking, just metal bridge decking, basically put in a little rain gutter, ran about 300 yards. If you look right down here, you can see the water wasn't an inch deep in there, but it was going so fast it was creating little rooster tails. That's the power that little bit of water had to undercut all of these sections all the way up that road. It ended up costing us less than $20,000 to do that, then come back in, patch the road versus having to come back and rebuild that whole road for something that looked like that. So that's really all I had to say. From my perspective, I see big water, big flood damage. I see big damage from little bits of water. So people with private roads, private property, keep an eye on that. You start seeing those little cuts, deal with them. Because if not, you're going to wind up with something you don't want. So, but with that, I'll give it back to Robin.
And Fountain Creek has got a display in the back with information, and people answer questions too if you're interested about that specific area. I'd like to introduce Jennifer Stark next. She is the meteorologist in charge with the National Weather Service Forecast Center in Pueblo, and we really appreciate her being here and putting up with the traffic. So I'm going to let her have a second to I'm going to get her slides in. You want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you're... Sure.
Thank you very much. I'm glad I made it just in time. There was an accident on 31st Street. It was awful, as well as the construction. So I'm here, and I'm happy to be here to talk to you. I want to talk a little bit about the National Weather Service operations during flash flood season, severe weather season, convective season. In the wintertime, we don't worry quite so much about flooding. We would maybe worry if we had some snowpack on there. Thank you. And then if it rained on top of it. So I go back to Waldo Canyon 2012, and I go back to the days leading up to that fire event. The Friday before the fire started, I remember leaving the office. We had red flag warning conditions out for days and no relief in sight from the hot, dry weather. No increase in relative humidity, no rain. And I thought if a fire started, it's really going to be dangerous. And sure enough, it did. And it was one of the worst events, weather events, that our staff in Pueblo has ever had to deal with. And people, I don't think, equate a wildfire with weather event, but it certainly is weather driven. And then shortly after that, we issued our first flash flood watch for the Waldo Canyon burn scar on July 3rd. Right after, the fire wasn't even out yet, and we already had a flash flood watch out. So we were very, very unsure of what we could expect from that burn scar, but we knew it was going to be dangerous. And it's been an incredible learning opportunity for our forecasters and meteorologists at the Weather Service office in Pueblo. If you're not familiar with us, we are a staff of 22 right now. I have 5 lead forecasters, 5 general forecasters. I now have a service hydrologist on staff. I made a plea to get a hydrologist in our office, and I was successful. And then myself, Tom Magnuson, and another gentleman are managers, but we're also meteorologists. So we all work when there's severe weather and flash flooding. One of the things that's changed in our operations is we will have one set of eyes on Waldo when there's thunderstorms in the area. So that's a big change because we forecast and warn for all of southeastern Colorado and into south central Colorado. So we have a huge area, but we have one person watching Waldo, which is a little over 18,000 acres. I want to make sure you understand when we issue a flash flood watch. We issue a watch when atmospheric conditions are capable of producing a number of thunderstorms. There's a lot of moisture in the atmosphere. We're expecting those thunderstorms to produce copious amounts of rainfall. We're expecting flash flooding not only on Waldo, but anywhere where those thunderstorms strike. We may have also had some antecedent rainfall, so the soils may be saturated. One of my concerns with Waldo is we can have a flash flood watch out and nothing happens, so you think we're crying wolf. Or we may have something happen and we don't have a watch out. The watch is there when we're expecting widespread conditions, so keep that in mind. And usually those watches may be issued up to a day in advance of those conditions. We could issue them in the early morning as well. So be aware of the weather. So when we have flash flooding, it's really a complex situation. It's a combination of the watershed size and slope, rainfall total, and the rainfall rate. We've learned a lot about Waldo and how the different drainage areas react during thunderstorms. So rainfall totals from a ½ inch up to an inch, and rainfall rates of around 2 inches per hour can cause some flooding on Waldo and some of the basins. But what we really are finding, and we go back and look at every single rain event, every single flash flood event, when we see rainfall totals over an inch, but the rainfall rates are 2 to 5 inches per hour, that's when we see the really significant flash flooding. So that's pretty good downpour. It may only last for 15 minutes, but if it were a 2 to 5 inch rainfall rate in an hour, a quarter of that would be, enough over an inch to cause some flash flooding. So Using those above guidelines, that's when we're going to issue flood advisories or flash flood warnings. So we're really looking at the rainfall rates, and we're looking at rainfall totals, and we're also looking at the antecedent soil moisture conditions. So our goal really is to get that flash flood warning out in minutes. We're not going to be able to give you an hour of lead time that we might somewhere else. We can't do that with this burn scar. That rain hits and runs off very quickly. We might be able to give you 5, 12, 15 minutes of lead time. And we're also trying to reduce the amount of false alarms. So, you know, it's a learning experience. We may issue more warnings. We may have some runoff or some sediment come down on Highway 24 and we don't have a warning out. So keep that in mind. It's not an exact science. And primarily, the thing that we've been able to rely on the most is our radar. The rain gauge data that's up there is great, but we're finding that it lags behind the runoff. So by the time we're getting that data in our office, we're already seeing the runoff. We're already getting reports of flooding. And also the webcams help. They can verify what we've seen on radar, but we're really using the radar. So some of the issues with the radar, we can have hail inside a thunderstorm that may lead us to believe that it's raining really heavily. And maybe it's not quite so much rain as it is hail. Some of the improvements that have been made to the radar are dual pole technology. So we're able to see what type of hydrometeor is occurring. Is it a great big raindrop? Is it a drizzle droplet? Is it a very large hailstone, small hailstone? How much hail's in there? Is it rain-coated hailstones? That type of thing. So we're using that data, that knowledge in that radar data to provide the service that we can. So our areas of most concern are still Fern Gulch to Cascade. Some of those areas really are very small basins, not a lot of mitigation work, as you know, in those areas. They can flood very quickly, and the mitigation has helped. And then some of the recovery of the vegetation has helped, but we're still cautious. So unfortunately, we don't have internet here, but our webpage is weather.gov/Pueblo. And you can find a lot of information on that webpage. We have a weather briefing, and we also put up a decision support services webpage when we have a flash flood watch out, when we have a red flag warning out, that type of thing. If you can't find what you're looking for, please call me, please email me, or Tom Magnuson. Just call the office. You can reach us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you can speak to a live person. You don't have to go through the automated menu. Yes, and we're a federal agency, and you can talk to a live person. So I'm actually pretty proud of that. So make sure you have several ways to get our warnings and forecasts from the Weather Service. Our website's great. Now on our cell phones, our smartphones, they have the WIA, the wireless emergency alerts, that are based on the cell phone tower coverage. All hazards weather radio is great for in the middle of the night, waking you up, or sometimes when you're not watching TV or commercial radio. Twitter or Facebook, local media. We work really, really closely with our TV media partners, our TV meteorologists, that many of you, I'm sure, have your favorites. We work with those folks and try and share information as quickly as we can. And then another company is Weather Call. You can sign up for a subscription service. It's a Colorado-based company, and they provide service all around the nation. But one of the things that I like about them, they are low cost. I think it's $10 to $12 a year for a subscription. You can sign up for your home, or you can have a mobile subscription service. So if you drive within a mile of a polygon, and you can sign up for flash floods, tornadoes, severe thunderstorms, whatever service you want to receive. But if you drive within a mile of our polygon, our outline of where we think the severe weather threat is, you get a phone call. So I ask you, leaving this meeting, and I know it's nothing new for most of you, we've been through this many times, know your risk, make your plan, practice that plan, to improve your outcome. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, and we'll give a chance for questions and answers when we're all done here too as well, so you can think about what you meant to ask Jennifer, and then you can ask it in just a few minutes. I'd like to introduce Kenneth Quintana, who is with the Colorado Department of Transportation in this region, and he's going to give us some brand new news that just came out today. We're the first ones to hear it.
Thank you. While she's getting that ready, just like she said, my name's Kenny Quintana. I'm Highway Maintenance Supervisor with CDOT here in Region 2. And I basically oversee every state, U.S. highway, and the interstate in El Paso County. So unfortunately, Highway 24 is mine to oversee as well. What Jennifer was talking about is since the Waldo Canyon fire, we have come up with 4 different response plans. And we're just now starting this one for 2016. And as you'll see here, it's a brief presentation, but it's basically a brief version of the protocol that we'll be using for our response on Highway 24. We have, like Jennifer was talking about, and Pete as well, we actually have what we call the per point locations where we have done some mitigation, and they start at Sand Gulch and they go all the way down to Waldo Canyon. One thing I do like to make sure and let people understand, and I think R.C. Smith did this a few years back, and I really like the way he did it, but mitigation, if you look at the word and the definition of mitigation, is not to prevent or completely stop, it's just to make lessen or less severe. So even though there's a lot of mitigation that's been done, by us, by El Paso County, the city of Colorado Springs, that's not going to stop complete flooding and erosion. It's just a way to kind of help slow that down. So we've learned a lot of things over the last 4 years. One thing that we did learn from last year is we didn't get the heavy rains like we did in the years past. So we really didn't get a real true trial run, if you want to call it that, of what some of the mitigation that we did, especially at Waldo Canyon with that super culvert. So this is just a picture, and I know you guys have probably, a lot of you have seen this over and over, but these are all the watersheds or the basins up there in the Waldo Canyon burn scar. And as you can see, and the colors kind of indicate different things. The darker red is indicating where a lot of the severe heat was during the fire. And if you look at different, if you look at the ground and what happens when the temperatures get real hot, it looks almost like glass where some of these areas are. And I like to use the illustration that before the Waldo Canyon burn scar, you could picture a golf course with green grass. You put water on it, it absorbs, the water kind of slows down with the grass. Now you take that same golf course and you get rid of the grass, and now you just put asphalt up there. So that's going to make that water just come down, and it's going to come down fast. So with all these locations where we've done some of the mitigation, Fern Gulch is one that's that's heavy on our minds, and it will be for a while. There are tons and tons of sediment still up in Fern Gulch. And the last flooding issue we had there at Fern Gulch was July 19th, 2014. Last year we didn't have anything really come out of there. We had the long, steady, heavy rains, and that's one thing we've learned too, is that the burn scar can handle the long, steady rainstorms. You've seen last year, in April, we had some heavy, wet snow through the month of April. And then right into May, we went into the rainy season. And fortunately, we didn't have what I call the gully washers. And we did have some runoff. In fact, I used to even joke going up and down the pass that we had water coming out of crevices on the side of the wall that I've never seen water come out of before. But that was because the ground was so saturated. And that's going to go and play and take part of why we're going to do the protocol that way we're going to do it last year and this year as well. These are just some illustrations of some of the improvements that were done, not just by CDOT, but Manitou Springs, El Paso County, the city. The ones that really affect us, or Highway 24, is everything that comes up through that corridor from, like I said, Fern Gulch all the way down to Waldo Canyon. In a way, I kind of look forward to seeing what Waldo Canyon can handle, but on the same token, I'm hoping that we kind of have a dry season as well.
This is one that the last thing that we had did as CDOT was we put up the cameras in the gates. And we were actually able to use it last year for the first time. The only closure that we had last year in 2015 was in May, and I believe it was May 8th on a Saturday, when we had a downpour of some heavy hail. I think we had almost 8 inches of hail on Highway 24. And we didn't have any flooding, but we did have cars that couldn't get up the pass. And that's the main reason why we closed. It had nothing to do with any flooding, but we did get to use the gates and try them out. One thing I'd like to point out with the cameras that they put up there as well, I don't know if you guys are aware, but you can access those cameras now on the CoTrip website. If anybody's not familiar with the CoTrip, if you just put cotrip.org, it'll bring up CDOT's website and just go to the cameras. It's pretty self-explanatory, and you can look at these cameras. So it's really come in handy for us as well as I think it will for the traveling public. Okay, with that said, like I said, CDOT really didn't do any kind of mitigation last summer. Everything that's been done up there was done back from when things started after the fire up until 2014 when they were working on the cameras. Because of that, and what we did with our protocol last year, we don't feel comfortable trying to change it or back off on trying to do what we did different than last year. It's a real tough balancing act for CDOT, for me, myself, and trying to make sure that we don't close the highways so that, we have the commerce coming through and you guys can get home. But on the same token, we got to be careful and make sure that we keep people safe as well. So we've learned over the last 4 years, there for a while, as many of you know, we were closing down anytime we saw a raindrop. And it caused some problems and some issues. But we had a consultant company through our engineering program do some data collection last year. And what they found out, the one incident that happened on July 19th at Ferdin Gulch, is that it had a cumulative rain accumulation of up to about 1 inch of rain. Actually, it was a little over 1 inch. And they felt comfortable that when that ground was saturated, then we did have that event on July 19th. And it's kind of funny, like Jennifer was talking as well, they're really hard to predict. That day, we had been in contact with the National Weather Service. We're really watching the radar. And there was maybe, I think there was like 1/10 of an inch was predicted that day in that area. And we weren't really thinking there was going to be an issue. And within a matter of minutes, maybe like 15, like Jennifer said, it was down on the road already. So it's kind of hard to predict these things. But because of that and the information we learned from Respect, we put into the protocol that we'll start monitoring, and we're in conjunction with USGS as well, where they have a website that we can get on and we can watch, and at these key points where these rain gauges are at. Once one of those rain gauge areas hits 1 inch, then we're going to start monitoring the corridor. Okay, that doesn't mean we're going to close the highway. We're just going to send crews up, and we'll have some at the gates. We'll have one running back and forth, a plow truck, just to watch to see if we start having the rock fall, and we'll start monitoring. Okay, that's going to be our trigger point. The other trigger point is if National Weather Service issues a flash flood warning, then that's when we'll send a crew out as well. The best way to illustrate this is with this flow chart that we come up with, and it's in our protocol. And if you can just follow along up here, I know it's kind of hard to see, but that's one thing that I want you guys to understand is I have 3 other supervisors that work along with me. And honestly, summertime is getting to be one of our least favorite times of year anymore, believe it or not, because of this. But once we start hitting the summertime, it'll start May 1st, just like it has in the past. We're going to start monitoring the weather. We're going to start monitoring the radar. We'll be keeping in close contact with the National Weather Service. In fact, I make the joke that I think each one of me, myself included, and the other 3 supervisors, we have National Weather Service on speed dial. And just like Jennifer said, they will answer at all times of the day too. At nighttime, early morning, they've never let us down. But that's what we'll start doing. We'll start monitoring. If we get, like I said, if we get the 5-day cumulative of 1 inch or the flash flood warning, that's going to trigger us to go up and start monitoring. Okay? One of the things that we have worked out with State Patrol is because we're not on the clock 24/7, we're on call 24/7. But if it's after hours, when we're not at work, or if it's on a weekend or a holiday, CSP has agreed that they will go out and start monitoring before we get up there, and then we'll send our crews up. So they'll be helping us with that. Once our crew gets up there, then we'll just do like I was telling you about the monitoring. And the next trigger point is if we start seeing flooding or debris entering Highway 24, then we're going to close Highway 24. And in the protocol, what we'll do is we'll close at the furthest east gate, which is at Cave of the Winds, and then the furthest west gate, which is just right there by, I think it's mile marker 292.7. It's just right there by what we call the Lower Green Mountain Falls exit. Depending on where we start seeing debris, if we start seeing debris somewhere through the canyon, we can move the closures depending on where it's at. If the two places that we really do expect to have the most problem is going to be at Cascade, but mainly at Fern Gulch. And what's going to work out good with us is that if we do have the incident or a debris come out at Fern Gulch, we can actually move the closure up to Cascade. And we have talked with El Paso County, and they have allowed us, if we need to put the detour in at Chapita Park, we can still run traffic through. Can't get any big trucks through, but we can still keep traffic moving, and we can start cleaning up the debris that comes out on Highway 24. So that's a plus there. And thanks for El Paso County for being willing to allow us to do that. If once the road is cleaned up, then we'll go ahead start to open Highway 24. Okay, is there any questions on that? And it's in the handout as well. This is just showing where the gate closures are at. We have them at Cascade, we have them at Lower Green Mountain Falls, and Cave of the Winds. So, and the cameras, we have some cameras at some of those locations as well. Now, in the event that we have, which I'm hoping we never do see, but in the event we do have a major storm that comes in there, let's say a 100-year flood, and we start losing portions of Highway 24, or all of 24 is completely gone, these are the detours that we will put in place. Our traffic engineering department has looked at this, and this is what they deemed is probably the best way to get people south and north to get around the closure. Okay. Now I know some of the local people can probably find some county roads to get around, but unfortunately we can't say that. Take the county roads or whatever you find out there, trails. But these are all state roads that you can use that get around. And in the pamphlet, it'll show you that some of the detour times that would be expected. But this would be the event that we would have a major catastrophic flood and we lose Highway 24. Okay. That's all I have.